another exciting session, and it is an early career mentoring panel discussion. This session is organized and chaired by Amira El Ayouti from Cairo University. Amira, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So just hello, everyone, and may I ask the speakers to switch on their cameras if they don't mind? Great. Okay. So I want to welcome you all to our session launching TIE's mentoring program to help early career in their career development and advancement. So this session actually is of different flavor, so do not expect any distributions or equations or anything like that. So TIES is starting to launch this program with aim to support early career researchers seeking to learn and improve their knowledge and skills in environmental sciences and statistics with academic and non-academic advice from senior academics and professionals. So it's an extreme pleasure and honor for me today to chair this panel discussion on mentoring with amazing mentors in statistics and mathematics from different parts of the world. So let me introduce first our distinguished panelists. So we have today Marian Scott, a professor of environmental statistics and a fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh and ISI, and a member of many sciences advisory committees like DEFRA, SHEAR. Marian has received several distinguished awards for her pioneering research into the application of innovative statistical techniques to environmental issues, and has supervised and is a mentor for many researchers, PhD and postdocs in environmental statistics, including myself. So I'm extremely happy today to be with her. We also have Sylvia Esterby, Professor Emerita of Environmental Statistics at UBC Okanagan, where she held faculty positions and served as head since year 2000. Before that, Sylvia worked as research scientist at the National Water Research Institute in Ontario. Sylvia held also positions and is a fellow of the Statistical Society of Canada and ASA, and is a member of the TIES founding board of directors and a former president of TIES. She has promoted environmental statistics in many events and trainings and through supervising PhD students as well. And we have Nicola Justice, Assistant Professor of Mathematics at Pacific Lutheran University, and she has lots of expertise in mentoring. She is a co-founder of the Statistics and Data Science Education Mentoring Program of ASA with Nick Horton. Nicola is interested in studying how students and teachers learn and grow into members of the statistics community, and she's passionate at helping students to develop into capable and ethical agents of data. So audience are welcome to post their questions in the chat at any time of the session. So as I said, it's kind of different session than the previous sessions. And let me start the session probably by asking Marian about her mentoring experience and how she sees mentoring. Like, can you tell us, Marian, why do you think has mentoring become very popular these days, and promoting mentoring programs has become very popular? And what is like the difference between supervising and mentoring? Like, what mentee-mentor relationship would look like as opposed to a student-supervisor relationship?
Thank you very much, Amira, and very nice to be here. It's a great pleasure. So we've asked quite a lot of questions. I guess in some senses that I might start with what I think is possibly slightly simpler about the difference between a mentor-mentee relationship and, let's say, a PhD supervisor-supervisee relationship. For me, the mentor-mentee relationship is a partnership. And I feel that there's an opportunity for both in that partnership to grow. And it's not just, let's say the slightly more experienced individual passing on, pearls of wisdom to less experienced member of the team. I feel it should be an equal partnership, and obviously I think that the mentor-mentee relationship is really rewarding, and it covers, as you mentioned, I think in your introduction, it's not just about technical skills or academic skills. It has a broader remit, which I think is really important and very powerful. Why has it become so popular? Well, in some senses, I think it's always been there, but it's perhaps become something that is more recognised now. And by giving something a name and describing it, we're giving it a higher profile in that respect. And as I said, I think it's about joint learning and dealing with challenges and thinking about how, as an individual, you can react to challenges, thinking about what some of those challenges are, talking through strategies, and thinking about how you develop plans. I mean, I know my own career was never designed to be what it has ended up being. So there's always got to be space for that fortuitous, serendipitous, if you like, interaction or opportunity. But I think certainly when you're starting out in your career, often there's a lack of confidence. And I think that the mentor-mentee relationship can help develop that confidence going forward. So I think that's probably enough from me on that. But I hope that's given a kind of flavour of what I think about the mentor-mentee partnership.
So maybe based on your expertise, Nicola, what do you think, based on what Marian has just said, like what mentoring program can provide more to mentees and mentors? So like what are the criteria possibly for a good mentor-mentee relationship?
Yeah, I think the reason why Nick suggested that I be on this panel is because I have some experience dabbling with research in mentoring. And so hopefully I can bring to this discussion some kind of discussion of what we have evidence to suggest. And there's really a lot of studies that have been looked at how young academics can grow professionally. And mentoring is one of the ones that's kind of highest rated by mentees. And it also is one of the types that actually has seen production or kind of changes that were desired in the mentee behavior and beliefs. But a lot of the evidence that is in favor of mentoring is paired with some sort of observation of the mentee's work with feedback. And so if you have some sort of, it doesn't have to be, I mean, if they're interested in teaching, growing as a teacher, then having an observation with feedback, or if they're interested in growing as a writer or a producer, or even just a speaker in public sessions, then being observed in that and getting feedback in that. And I think another key feature of a mentoring program is being really clear about expectations from the onset. And that could be time expectations. So sometimes mentoring comes under criticism because mentees expect the mentor to like spend an hour with them weekly, and mentors are like, you're lucky if you get a half hour a month of my time, and so being really clear about the time expectations. But also with the programs we develop, we ask the mentees, what exactly are you looking for in this program, and try to match accordingly and being really clear about those kind of communications. And then the last piece, and this doesn't have a lot of research evidence, but I've seen it in mentoring programs throughout, is this emphasis that you shouldn't expect to get all your mentoring from one person. And so a lot of disappointment comes from mentees kind of thinking this mentor is going to be their source of all sorts of everything they need, and when in fact they really need to like glean from several people, whether it's a formal or an informal relationship. And so some researchers, the most popular are Jean Lave and N.T. and Wenger, have called something a community of practice that focuses less on a single one-on-one mentoring relationship, but more on there's a whole community of people that are your mentors. It could be people just a little bit like peers, and people who are maybe just 1 or 2 years further along the path with you, and then the ones that are seniors that have lots of veteran experience. So kind of thinking more broadly about the mentoring relationship being more a community that's all sharpening each other.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much, Nicola, for bringing all these kind of expectation thing, and there is quite a lot to actually to know about such programs, and we will come to some experiences as well later on in the discussion. And I think that's a good start to know from Sylvia's point of views then what are the things that need to be considered when building a mentoring relationship. And as Nicola suggested, like the expectations is very important. So what maybe we should be expecting from the mentor and what to expect from the mentee.
So that was directed to me. Yeah. Well, I guess probably Marian, they probably both covered this. I think in general, the mentor should be willing to share, discuss, and advise, and the mentee maybe doesn't necessarily have to have specific questions that want to be answered. Sometimes it's a matter of just help being integrated into the community. So I looked at the what you had on the webpage about the program, and it's covered a lot of areas in which we might expect the mentee to receive advice or direction. But what I would like to pick up on is just maybe one of the last comments that Nicola made about community, and say that I think ties, if we ask what ties mentoring program could add to maybe what an individual would get in their early university career, or perhaps within another institution where they work, is I think ties, in fact, can offer a community, because we've developed as a relatively small community, all with sort of a common focus, although we approach it from many different aspects. So I think that's whether it be methodological development primarily, but it's based almost exclusively on either the type of problem or the type of data that generates the method, or the application of methods for particular problems. So the university mentoring program might help the individual to understand, how to divide your time between the 3 types of functions you're expected to do. Whereas ties can actually then help with the mentors from the ties community can also help bring the individual into the community. So I think I've diverged quite a bit from your original question, and inserted in what I wanted to say. But I think that ties, a ties mentoring program can then serve the function of what we originally envisioned it as sort of a link between other disciplines involved in solving environmental problems and statistics and the other quantitative subjects. So I think that's a strong, would be the strong contribution.
Yeah, I think this matches quite a lot with what Nicola said about it's not just a one-person mentor relationship. Like it could involve many mentors and many people, many more than one into the program or into the relationship. So I think that's a good point, I think. So Marian, what do you think early career researchers are always looking for? Like what is the things that they are always asking and seeking for in mentoring, perhaps?
Well, I guess that my experience in some senses is a little bit, as Sylvia was saying, to think about how do I manage my time, because I have many calls in my time and many deadlines. It can be as, I guess, pragmatic as, I've written something, would you please look at it and give me any tips or advice to help me have it published? Or it could be, I'm in a really difficult situation. There's someone I'm sharing an office with and, you know, we're not getting on. How do I handle this? It might be understanding something about the bureaucracy that we all struggle under in our institutions and organizations. It can be thinking about what should, you know, is this a job I should be aiming for, or is this a good career direction? There's a whole host of questions that I think come up in the mentoring relationship. I mean, I think one of the other things that I see in some respects is not necessarily questions, but it's sometimes how to deal with disappointment. You know, your first paper doesn't get accepted and you get these terrible comments back from some reviewers, or you're not selected for an interview, these sorts of things. And it can be such a blow to your confidence. So it's not so much a question, but it's also helping people understand that these are not unique experiences and that we all have them, but you have to find ways to try and learn from them and develop from them. And so it's helping with that. So it's a combination of, as I said, the kind of prosaic questions about, you know, who should I speak to in HR to deal with, or something like that, to more specific things, as I've said, about, you know, can you read this and tell me what you think? Have I got the tone correct? Is it ambitious? Et cetera, et cetera. So really a variety of things, I would say, Amira. That's one of the, I think, the exciting things about being a mentor. But I think being a mentor, you also sometimes have to be realistic. In some senses, occasionally you're asked questions that you yourself don't know the answer to, or it could be something really quite difficult to deal with, where you really need sort of expert advice, for instance, if it's anything to do or something to do with, let's say, mental health. You know, we're not all trained health professionals, but it's also knowing about what some of the signs might be and thinking about how you can begin to talk about some of those things and perhaps suggest how to find help if that ever arises. So those are the sorts of challenges that I would see, as well as some of the nice questions that you can be asked.
Thank you, Marian. So I think you have all brought the thing about it's not just for the mentee, it's also for the mentor, and the benefits are actually shared between both. So for example, Nicola, so how do you see we can promote actually the mentoring programs to mentors, not just to the mentees? So I think that's volunteering work. So how can we promote it? So that's a question that perhaps you have an answer or advice for.
Is hidden in that question the reality that oftentimes you have way more mentees than mentors available for the program? Okay. Yeah, so I think a lot of times mentors' heart is in the right place, but yeah, it's just a lack of time, not so much a lack of interest. So one way to promote it is to be really clear about the time expectation and make it reasonable. So I'm a part of a group that's developing a mentoring program at our institution that's related to just life issues outside of academia. So people who have common issues, whether it's some sort of health issue or going through, divorce or something like that, to be confidentially matched with someone else on campus who has experienced that life issue. But in order to kind of keep the time commitment manageable for mentors. We just have had it limited to a maximum of 3 meetings. So that's the only expectation for 1 hour, 3 meetings for 1 hour. And we have an influx. We have more mentors than we have mentees willing to participate in that program. So I think being really clear about those expectations and making sure the mentors and the mentees are aware, I think that can really help with participation from mentors. But another sort of answer to the hidden question is that a lot of times peer-to-peer mentoring is really effective. And again, it's part of that kind of community of practice approach that recognizes that you don't have to have a seasoned veteran to learn from. And so on application processes or whatever, you could include are you open to a peer mentoring, or maybe like a 2-on-1 kind of situation where you meet together as a group with a mentor and people at several places along the line, instead of just demanding this exclusive one-on-one relationship. Those are a couple ideas.
I think these are very helpful. So you have been talking about mainly providing professional advice, but not maybe not very academic advice. Do you think mentoring also can provide like academic advice, like academic specific, I would say like specific advice for a certain piece of research or something like that? So Sylvia, if you want to have an input on this, please.
Well, yes, I think it could. Well, I'll go back to what is actually written on the website about the mentoring program TIES is proposing. You're saying that it would not really be working on a research project. I don't know if I got that quite right.
Yeah, we're just wondering if we are realistic about that.
You're wondering if you're really, well, I think it can go both ways. I think that if you ask a mentor to participate, then they'd need to know whether or not they might be getting into a relationship with someone actually doing research with them. So I think that might actually be something that's very good for individuals who are in certain circumstances. I think the situation now for doing interdisciplinary work, like many of us do in environmetrics, it's changed remarkably. When TIES was founded, there were very few countries in which you would have statisticians who had actually been involved in environmental work. So then it would have been maybe highly critical or very, very helpful for people in countries where the statisticians weren't really interested in working on applied problems to have a mentoring program. So another case where having a mentoring program, I should say a mentoring program that actually involved research. Another case where it actually works is in the university setting where you have a university or college which doesn't have a research track as such, where the faculty primary responsibility is teaching. So then people from who are in a research university, another university, could be mentors, and that would be very helpful. So certainly, if the understanding is there that you would actually be involved in research with the mentee, then yes, it would be great for the mentee, and in many cases good for the mentor too, looking for young people to work with. So I think it leads back to what Nicola was saying about being very clear about the expectations. So you would in fact get different types of people probably willing to do it, to mentor, depending upon whether this would be the type of commitment where you'd actually be more involved with research than otherwise. Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so so Nicola, have you found like any key differences or challenges or like best practices across the different mentoring experiences that you have had?
Yeah. And I guess this kind of building off what Sylvia said, providing resources for the mentors. So this is kind of related back to your question about how a lot of times you don't have response from mentors because they feel like, well, who am I to mentor somebody? I don't know anything, so kind of encouragement that way. You don't have to know all the answers, you just need to be willing to support and engage in these discussions. But I think, so yeah, resources for the mentors, but I think the most important thing that's often forgotten with mentoring programs is the power dynamic. And this is really key a lot of times because in mentoring programs, you have later career folks who are putting together the program and have kind of forgotten about the power dynamic. But, essentially, for me as an early career researcher, if I was paired with Sylvia or Marian, essentially there would be an element of like, wow, if I make this person angry, they could destroy my career. Now, they don't appear to me to be people who would try to do that, but there is that fear and power dynamic in a lot of mentoring relationships. If it's within your own department, it's very immediate, right? Like this person controls what positions I get, what opportunities I have, whether I pass or fail, so there's a lot of that power dynamic, but also even across other institutions, a lot of times there's a mentor who's really well known or really well respected in the community. And so that can make it really difficult. For example, if you launch this career and you match and you just kind of hope that all goes well, or you only hear from the mentors, you ask the mentors for feedback. And then at the end, you collect maybe survey data. How did it go? And then you realize, well, this person says like, well, my mentor didn't respond to any of my emails. And so I felt lost and actually more discouraged from the program in the first place because I was not worth meeting with, or, something like that. When the reality is either the mentor, it just like got spammed or whatever. But I think it's really easy for a mentee to not initiate these kinds of problem solving situations because they don't want to make the mentor angry, or they don't, whatever. Or if there was some sort of like, actually this mentor doesn't realize, but they're using this language that's really offensive to me or my culture, or whatever it could be. And so really making sure that the program has liaisons that check in with both the mentor and the mentee. Have you met yet? Okay, if you're still not hearing from the mentor, let's pair you with someone else, or just kind of initiating those discussions so that it's not like just a top down through the mentor getting information about how the program's going. And it can be the other way. The mentor's reaching out to the mentee and it's no response or something like that. And so then you could say, well, let's pair this mentor with somebody else, or have a liaison intervene to kind of see what's going on. Is there a reason why you're not responding or something like that? So I think just keeping in mind that power structure and having representation in our program that we developed for statistics education in the American Statistical Association. For that section, I was kind of the representative that was the kind of in the mentee position. And so if you have someone in the program development team who's in the mentee position, who would be able to say like, wait, this situation, this plan that we have is going to be tricky for the mentees because of this, instead of just a bunch of mentor kind of folks being in the design team, having representation from others there too.
Do you think, Marian, you have other key challenges or things that you want to bring into the discussion, like maybe different from Nicola? Or
no, I think I understand what Nicola's saying about the power dynamic, and I think that is a very sensitive point that we would need to consider. When it comes to, if you like, academic advice, I suppose some of my experiences in mentoring, usually someone, my mentee, would not be someone whom I was directly line managing, for instance, as a postdoc. They might be my own PhD student, but more likely they could be someone else's. So I think there's a little bit of a tension thinking about the kind of academic advice, because in some respects you could be perceived as almost interfering in someone else's project. So we need to be careful of that a little bit. I think as Nicola mentioned, the idea of perhaps the peer-to-peer mentoring, I think, is really good. But I think probably adding into that third person who might have more experience, I would say, in some senses to help, because I guess while I think peer-to-peer is really powerful, and we use that quite a lot in our own teaching practices, because I think students often learn more from that than they do from listening to me, for instance. But I think it's also kind of marrying that up with the levels of A, knowledge, and B, experience that can help contribute to. So maybe the mentoring scheme, it would be beneficial almost to have it more as a team rather than as a, one-on-one. And that potentially could overcome some of the kind of the power issues. It could overcome some of the challenges about nobody's replying to my email and I don't know why, and that type of thing. And I think it kind of gives the benefit of, particularly if for instance, there are some common aspects in the, if you like, I suppose the mentees questioning. It could also open up opportunities to, learn from each other more. Mm-hmm. That's all I can think of at the minute, I must say, Amira. I think it is why do people want to be mentors? Well, I suppose in some senses it's about, well, I know that the ASA is very big on giving back. And I think probably many of us have that somewhere in our kind of DNA as well a little bit. And it's also having that opportunity about giving back. But I think, as Sylvia says, it's also about being realistic about how much time people have and what the expectations are. Because if we set the expectations too high, there's, I think, a real chance that the programme will flounder a little bit, because there's nothing worse than being disappointed. So I think being realistic about what the expectations are and being clear about those is a really good piece of advice as the programme is kicking off. And I think the other thing I would say is being flexible, recognising that, we don't always get everything right the first time we try something. And sometimes it takes a little bit of courage to say, I'm really sorry, I got this wrong. Let's kind of, reset it a little bit. So I think both at a programme level and at an individual level, it's worth bearing that in mind also.
I could add something to that,
yes,
if that's okay. Yeah. So I think it goes, I'll take it back to, you asked earlier, why is peer mentoring, why is mentoring so popular now? And Marian said, well, maybe it's always been there and we haven't recognized it. And this makes me think of maybe something that one might do at TICE conferences is actually do something that would be equivalent to sort of peer mentoring by bringing students together at a conference. And I think we've been doing some of this thing in various societies without sort of thinking about it, in that bigger societies often arrange things for students so they get together. So in a sense, that's peer mentoring because it's networking. I suppose it's mentoring because it's networking. They've started students' conferences. So the Statistical Society of Canada has a student conference, and I don't think that's unique. But something it might be thinking about is the mentoring program is actually doing something to bring students together or young career researchers together in a mentoring as part of the mentoring program. And the other point that Nicola made about the power structure and being careful not to put a mentor and a mentee together where there might be hazard to the mentee's career if they made a wrong step. this reminds me that, in fact, in some grant applications, you're actually, and you can suggest referees, you're actually told that you can say someone you don't want to be the referee because because you've had difficulties with them. So this seems to be a very good point, and make your the mentoring program a little bit more complicated maybe than when I looked at it, what I thought it might be. But I think these are very, very important points that Nicola made to take into account as you go forward.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point, Sylvia. Thank you very much. So do you think, Nicola, is there like a perfect or like an optimal period or frequency, like times for like the frequency of the times of the meetings between the mentor and the mentee, or it's something up to both of them to decide, or there should be something that they both have to abide to at the beginning?
Nothing in the research that I've looked at answers that question. Just from experience, I think it's all about expectations and being clear up front. In some of the programs that I've been in, there's been kind of a form that the mentee filled out that said, kind of explored, what are you hoping to get out of this? Where do you hope to be in 5 years, in 20 years? What are the things that you think you need? And how often ideally would you meet, and kind of getting a lot of that, kind of putting a lot of ownership for what is talked about into the mentee's hands. And that kind of communication can be great. But again, if the mentor is just really clear up front, in fact, I was just asked to be a part of a mentoring program as a mentor, and the call for participants said that it would be, I think they said 5 1-hour sessions, and the mentee that selected me said, okay, so when should we schedule our weekly meeting? And it was a really difficult conversation when I said, I'm going to talk to the mentoring program to make sure I didn't misunderstand this commitment. And I had to be really honest about, this is what I can do. If you want to choose someone else, I totally understand if you think you need more support than that. But if you want to, if you think this, what I can do is going to be satisfy what you're looking for, then I'd love to be your mentor. And to really emphasize, like, I would love to do it. I'm not trying to get rid of you, but this is a boundary that I'm setting. And I really struggled with that, but I also realized hopefully that's teaching her something, how to set a boundary and be clear about your expectations. So that's great. If you're struggling though to recruit mentors, then it might be wise to say, this is the maximum of amount of times that you can meet, or to give it in the mentor and say, you can set the maximum or minimum that you'd like to meet, and you can kind of give ideas for, as little as 2 times a semester, or as much as, weekly or every other week. This is a range of expectations, and it's up to you to say, this is what I can do.
So I think key point is setting expectations from both sides. So I think that's the key point. And bringing this point, I'm just thinking that, for example, sometimes mentees are looking for help in many, like in many areas. It's not just about their work or about their research. Maybe they have I don't know, they are looking for help, for example, with their mental well-being, as Marian highlighted. And it can be sometimes difficult to an assigned mentor to provide help in a very specific for a very specific point for the mentee. So that's where might a problem happen. And I think it's very important to be clear about what we can offer and what the mentor can offer. And yes, the expectations, I think that's the key point we have been talking about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just looking if we have any questions in the chat, and if anyone want to ask questions and want to raise hand and just participate, so please do. So I think the discussion is a very rich one and has been enlightening so many ideas for the way forward to develop the program and make it work. So let me see that. I don't think we have questions in the chat. Yes, please, Ignacio.
Hi, thank you so much for all these comments. I think these are really, really important and it helps to everyone in the community. I have a general question. If any of the panelists would like to answer or at least give some advice on this. How much late changes in society have actually changed the dynamic between mentors and mentees? I mean, I'm thinking, for instance, in light of the dynamic on the job market, where more and more students want to go to industry opposite to academia for different reasons, or the everyday more common virtual modality as consequence of COVID-19. So how much late changes in society have changed the dynamic between mentors and mentees? Thank you.
Yeah, and may I also add something to what you have said, Ignacio? I think it's also about, it's not just about these changes, they're also about changing and like moving from one country to another and traveling across. So I think this is a very good point, Ignacio.
Well, I could answer. Well, I could change the question a little bit, Ignacio. Sorry, because I don't think I can answer the one you had. But what I had a thought that was in changing, and it related to when I read that we're looking at academic mentors and early career researchers. I thought that maybe we weren't covering the individuals who actually will go into a different sector. So we aren't covering the individuals who might work, for example, even now in banks and insurance companies, which I guess you will agree about, is, you know, more and more as climate change climate change particularly has been an environmental issue that really is catching the attention of everyone. And so I think we, as statisticians, again, want to be in the forefront of being able to be part of the solution. And so I was wondering whether or not we're actually covering the group of individuals who really might go into a different sector. Primarily, the individuals who attend our conferences are people who are in the academic community now, but not entirely. Certainly, when we started the society, all of us weren't in the academic community. So I think we see a change where many people may actually have more opportunity to be outside of academia, and I think this would be one of the considerations. But in terms of the kind of changes you were looking at, I guess somehow you would need to match people up, and so maybe that's actually broadening the scope. But what I had answered was not your question, but another question, a question that I had picked out. So maybe somebody.
Building on what Sylvia said, I think that at least as it applies to mentoring at our institutions, for those of us who are in academia, my institution has a career services and alumni connections kind of department. And I think this might be one place where we could outsource. And actually, they've started a mentoring program kind of through their alumni and career services. So kind of recognizing and directing. So, you know, our mentees may look to us for certain things, but then encouraging them to connect through other means of other opportunities out there, and maybe spurring on our alumni or career services to try to initiate a program that satisfies that desire to connect more with industry instead of academia. So I think recognizing that, or at least learning about life in industry or a little bit more and connecting that way, but then kind of knowing like this, I can't help as much with that, but let me connect you with somebody who can, and trying to really foster those connections with folks in industry. We've found that alumni are very keen to mentor students from their alma mater, and that's been really fun, and just more connections throughout the university. But it seems to be a really meaningful experience for them as well. So kind of maybe even possibly outsourcing, not as a way of not worrying about someone and kind of dishing it off, but as a way of recognizing the limits of your expertise.
Marian, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question in some senses, in that as Nicola just said, in our institution, people will sometimes have mentors who are in different disciplines in different parts of the university. And so they're not dealing with the, if you like, as we were talking about earlier, the kind of academic aspects of being a statistician. It's much more about the kind of career development. I guess from the point of view of mentoring people who, for instance, are working in industry, in particular, as Sylvia said, in banks or anything like that, it's quite hard to see necessarily how you can always be a good mentor in that situation. I mean, there will be, if you like, discussion points which in some senses are agnostic to whether you're an academic or whether you're in a bank or whether you're, anywhere else. But there will be other aspects of the discussion that you would like to have that will be quite specific. And I think in that circumstance, it would be very difficult to really fulfill that full mentoring role. And as I kind of said earlier, when I mentioned the kind of thing around, say, mental health, I have no expertise whatsoever in mental health. So I absolutely, all I can do in those circumstances is help someone find how to find skilled help. Now, that's not really what the situation would be. Working in a bank really isn't an indication of mental health issues. So I can't offer any advice about help to help you not work in a bank. But equally, I think there might be situations where there'll be issues being raised that without having any understanding or expertise or experience in that area, it would be very difficult to have a fruitful mentor-mentee discussion about that point. So I think the matching is going to be really quite challenging, but will be an important point.
Thank you all. And we have another question from Abdel.
To see Marian and to see everyone, and it's really a timely kind of a panel subject for a panel discussion. The things that I would like to say that you have two sides. The side with individual who has much more experience, and he or she would like to enhance it. And then you have the other side, which is the individual that he has more energy to do much more work. And I think the main thing for mentoring to be successful as a formal type of mentoring in universities or other places is to be beneficial for both. That the two sides has to benefit from it. And I think if this benefit is not there, this mentoring thing will end. And it can end in very bad way, which doesn't really continue to enhance itself. I remember we had a situation in which one faculty member was put forward for tenuring to be promoted to associate or professor. And he lost, and he has to leave his position. And the reason for this, the mentoring didn't end. The formal mentoring between the individual continued. When he was a student, he continued to be mentored by his other individual, and it's taking very long time. And I think this is a major issue, is to determine when this kind of formal type of mentoring will be beneficial to continue with it, or when it is beneficial to stop it. The other thing that about mentoring, which I think Sylvia and I think Nicola was saying, and Marian, is about meetings. And I think the meetings is informal type of mentoring. People don't have to do it. If you are a supervisor of a graduate student, then you have to do your job. It's your formal mentoring. And I think we have to differentiate between both, because the young individual would like to continue to enhance the power of his or her experience to be able to do that. And this can be worked only through a research program, a real problem, where people of common interest are working on it. And I think this is really, really very important type of thing that takes it into different phases, I think. This is what I really thought, but I just wanted to get in just to say hi to Mary and to Nicola, I think. And I just arrived in Cairo about half an hour ago.
So welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So do we have any comments about what Abdel just come to said? I think
Sorry.
please.
The end of the mentoring relationship is a little bit tricky. So what's it going to look like moving forward? So that can be a source of kind of discussion prompts as it comes to a close. It seems unnatural to be like, we are never going to talk again, so it's good to have ideas about what are you welcome to still do? Like, are you still welcome to send me a paper and ask for feedback occasionally? Or are you still welcome to come by my office anytime? Or are you still welcome to set up meetings? Or is it, I really hope that I see you at a conference someday and then we could maybe have chat, let's see if the stars align in that direction. So just kind of what does it look like? And these kinds of questions that you've asked me, let's talk about who you have in your life that you could ask those questions or similar questions, so just kind of closure and what that looks like. Or it could look like, a lot of times it's hard to like terminate and not feel like a jerk. So maybe kind of saying like, let's schedule a meeting a year from now to check in or something like that. That's kind of providing that space, but not leaving it without a sense of, like, should we have a meeting a year from now or whatever that space looks like? Or, oh, we are both going to go to that conference. Let's plan to meet for coffee or whatever. So yeah, having discussions about what happens moving forward can be really great.
Thank you, Nicola. And just to wrap up this, do you have any like concluding remarks that you want to add before we end this very rich discussion? And I think one good point also that Abdel has brought up, and I think it has been mentioned as well in the discussion, is about the evaluation and the kind of feedback we get from both the mentor and the mentee throughout this relationship to make sure that we are they are both on the right track. Or
I just would like to say one thing, which is connected with the schools of thoughts. You can have a school of thoughts that creates some kind of a school in a particular area. If you are working with Sir Ronald Fisher, or you are working with Bayesian thing, you have a school, and the school is continue to generate mentoring. And this raises the question, if you are working on a material that is worthwhile, continuing to work on it, or something that really will phase away and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to go and tell me that I am getting the derivative or the integral in this way, except if you are developing something a little bit more in the methodology. That's what I wanted to say, is that it can lead to something that is continuous in a reasonable way. That's what I wish just to say that.
Do you have a minute to say one more thing? Yeah. So what I raised about people in industry or in mentors in other areas is essentially what I wanted to say earlier. I wanted to add this in, that if we maybe we could broaden it not just to academic mentors, but we could broaden it to mentors coming from research institutes, think tanks, other, and then we would be able to help people who are going into areas other than academia.
yes, that's a good thing. That's a good point. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sylvia. And Nicola, do you have anything that you want to add before we end?
I don't really have anything else to add except to just say thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk about these things, and I am chewing on Ignacio's question some more. And yeah, I really have enjoyed it. So thank you.
Cheers. And Marian?
Yeah, I just had one thought to add. I guess as the program develops, I think it would be good to have, we're talking, I'm going to put my hands up, we're talking about connecting, let's say, two people. But equally, we want to connect down the lines as well. So I think there's a community of mentors who are going to learn from each other, and a community of mentees who can also reflect on their experiences and help improve. I know that's not, I can't do it very well when I'm trying to do this by hand, but if you think about going that way, but also going that way, it's those connections that I think will really strengthen the program also.
So thank you, Marian, and thank you very much, Nicola and Sylvia. This has been a very, very rich discussion. And I'm extremely honored and happy to be in this discussion today. And I think it has quite enlightened for many ideas for the way forward for the mentoring program TIES is launching. And hopefully we can get something good to work. So thank you, everyone.